Good afternoon. My name is Nicola Thompson, and I am here today representing on behalf of ChildLinK Guyana. Now, as you might know, or you may not know, because it is a very under-discussed topic in Guyana, it is currently autism awareness, and as a result, we have with us today a panel of three educators who have been working within the special education sector. So I'm really happy to have with us Ms. Marcia Smith, Elizabeth Allard, and Anita Hines. Ladies, do you mind giving viewers a brief introduction of yourself and you? We can ahead with you, Marcia. Oh, oh, it seems that Marcia is not here. Maybe Elizabeth, you can go ahead. We can't hear you.
Yes, sorry to hear you. You break up a little for me, Jensen. Could you repeat yourself, please?
Oh no, I was just given an introduction into the topic today. We will be focusing on autism awareness, and given your role within the education sector and focusing on special needs, I wanted to just give a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you do.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth Alert. I am the speech and language at Mid Pride Academy, as well as a behavioral therapist and a behavioral consultant at Mid Pride Academy School for Children with Special Needs and Therapy Center.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Anika?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miss Onika Hines. I am the senior tutor of the Step by Step School for Children with Autism. I'm trained in applied behavior analysis, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and other areas that affect children with autism. Basically, I'm in charge of all the daily coordination of the school and communicating with parents, training staff, and so on. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And it's really great to have you both here because I know you have a wealth of experience in the area. So, when it comes to autism, a lot of persons might not be familiar of what it is. So, for those who might want to learn a bit more, what would you say are some of the risk factors that might contribute towards an autism diagnosis? But before you answer that, maybe just give an overview of what autism is.
Is that question for me or Miss Elizabeth?
It's an open question. Either of you can answer it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I can go first. Autism is a neurological disorder. It that being said, basically deals with the brain. There are many risk factors as well with that, but many persons that who are diagnosed also with autism, it affects them differently. So you would see different symptoms in different areas with children with autism, but it is a neurological disorder.
Yes, I completely agree with what Miss Elizabeth said. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder and it affects children in three main areas, well, persons in three main areas, which is the social communication and repetitive restrictive behaviors. So those three areas are mainly affected with autism.
Okay, so for those who might not understand the language, when you talk about things like repetitive behaviors and so on, would you mind giving a few examples of those?
Yes, so repetitive behaviors are basically behavior patterns that you see, things that they would do repetitively over and over. For instance, climbing, jumping, spinning, those are all repetitive behaviors and they usually form a pattern. It's hard to break them out of it. If you try to stop them from doing it, then you might have some tantrums and so on. So that make up the repetitive part of autism, behavioral part of autism.
Thanks so much for that. Would you say there are any risk factors that might? Sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was saying, added to what Onika, Miss Hines was saying, I do agree with that too, because you would have flopping of the hands, you would have pacing and so back and forth. All of that is considered as repetitive behaviors. But also to know that even when a child have repetitive behaviors, not because okay, not all the children with flopping of their hands or be pacing. It would be in different areas, different ways that they're showing repetitive behaviors. It doesn't have to be all that they are showing for one child.
Okay, thanks so much for clarifying that for us. So when it comes to an autism diagnosis, how does that usually happen? How does someone get diagnosed with autism?
So
What do
autism
they?
diagnosis An autism diagnosis is based on observation and questionnaires, because autism is not a condition that you can do a blood test and see whether the child has autism or not, but it is based on observation. You have to spend time observing the child behavioral patterns, communication levels, social interaction levels, and it's basically based on assessment. So the parents would play a big part in that too, because they would be the person that would be rating their child for the questionnaire part too.
Okay, so if a
Uh,
parent suspects, Elizabeth, I see you were about to make a point. I'm sorry I keep moving ahead, but
yeah.
just to keep the conversation going, as soon as one person finishes speaking, you can just jump in if you have a thought. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, sure. Yes, added to also what Onika was mentioning there, because at MedPride Academy, how it is that we do diagnosis, we also see added from the assessment being done with the parent. There's the first step, and then from there, then we move to do the evaluation, where different therapists would see the child. If you the behavioral therapist, a speech therapist, and an OT would also see that child, and as was mentioned, we study behavior patterns. We also pose the questionnaire, as well as different tasks for the child to see how the child responds, and then we would they all the therapists, according to what, after they sit with that child for that period of time, then they will come together, and then upon their finding, then this is how the diagnosis is formed, to know which level, if it's level 1, level 2, or level 3 on the spectrum that child is on.
Can you give us a bit of insight into what levels 1 to 3 might look like to a lay person?
Well, a child with level 3 autism is severe. This they have more behavior tantrums and more behaviors. And then they have to be supervised more than a child with level 2. It's less supervision, as well as level 1. But even though a child may be diagnosed with level 3 on the spectrum, it can move from level 3 to level 2 to level 1. They don't stay at level 3. And this is only according to the service that they receive and the therapy that they receive, then it can make that change. It just doesn't make that change just like that. According to the service and how steady or often they receive that service, and how many service they receive, this is how the level from level 3, from the severe to the level 2, or to level 1, which is very mild for that child.
Okay, I would also like to add to diagnosing children with autism. Diagnosing a child with autism is a very technical thing that we get involved in, because you have to ensure that you do thorough screening. So it's not like one person trained in applied behavior analysis could say, oh, this child has autism, but there are specialized persons who are trained to diagnose children with autism, mostly a doctor, PhD, a person who has a PhD in psychology, clinical psychology. Those are persons that do diagnostic assessment. mostly persons who are trained in the field of autism do screening for children with autism, basically detecting the signs and cater for early intervention and those kind of approaches in order to help the kid. But in order to diagnostically diagnose a child with autism, which is a label, a lifetime label, it doesn't change because a child with autism will grow up to be an adult with autism. So it's a label, and only persons who are thoroughly trained in that area can actually diagnose a child with autism. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much for that. I see we have Marcia back with us. Hi, Marcia. Good afternoon.
Hi, good
Can you hear
afternoon.
us?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
hearing you.
great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Would you mind just introducing yourself to those who might now be joining us and what you do?
Good afternoon again. I am Marcia Smith, the mother of a son on the spectrum, and founder of Gifted Hands Learning Center for Children with Special Needs. School has been 10 years old. Jared is 16 years old. So basically, my experience as a mother, as a teacher for special needs schools, 16 years as a mother, 10 years as a teacher.
Yes, we were just having a discussion a bit earlier about what some of the signs of autism is, and some of the behaviors were brought forward. And I was curious to hear your thoughts and sharing your perspectives regarding some of the behaviors, some of the actions that a parent who might suspect their child might be on the spectrum can look out for.
The term spectrum refers to a wide range of symptoms, skills, and levels of impairment or disability that children with ASD can have. Some children are mildly impaired by their symptoms, while others are severely disabled. Because it's a spectrum, it goes from 0 to 9. So it's
Mhm.
either the higher end of the spectrum or the lower left end of the spectrum. So in
Okay.
every disability, there's mild, moderate, and severe. Every disability. Can't run away from that. So,
Mhm.
like I said, it depends on which end of the spectrum and the child falls, and there's no two children that are on the spectrum that have would carry the same traits. So, if they're
Mhm.
level 1, they don't have the same traits. Well as level 3, they don't have the same traits.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing that. Now, when it comes to some of the things that persons need to consider, would you say there are any risk factors related to a subsequent autism diagnosis? Is there anything, is it something that is historic within your genes, or is it environmental factors? What are some of the contributors or the risk factors associated with autism? This is an open question.
Autism,
Anyone can go.
autism is primarily caused by a genetic factor. It is not caused by vaccines and things like an infection and so on that people would like to believe, but it is basically caused by a genetic factor. And I think that's the main thing that we should look at when examining autism, because it usually comes from maybe a family member, a grandfather or a grandmother, and things like that we would see, and so it is passed down. It might skip a generation and then it would reoccur in a future generation. So basically, the risk factor is genetic. So if you have persons in your generation with autism, then the future generation is likely to be at risk for someone to have autism.
If
Yes.
I can say, scientists do not know the exact causes of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, but research suggests that both genes and environment play an important role.
And added to that, that Ms. Anika had mentioned too, some of the factors that she indeed, which genes that is passed on, and it's also common more. The risk more is in it's in a boy than a girl. So the high level of autism in boys are it's higher than you would find in the girls.
Thanks so much for sharing those thoughts. Elizabeth, you mentioned a point I was hoping to also highlight when it comes to a bit of the gender disparity regarding autism diagnosis. Can you give like any indication as to why or what might be a contributor to the fact that more boys are diagnosed with autism than girls?
Answer that question.
Elizabeth can't hear you, or I'm not sure if that might just be me. Sorry about that. We're experiencing a bit of difficulties. But yes, Elizabeth, I see you're back with us. Can you go ahead, or would you like me to pivot this question to Miss Smith or Miss Hines? Miss Hines?
Okay, so research have shown that boys are more likely to be diagnosed with autism, and there is scientific research that shows that girls are much milder, and so most we would see mostly males develop severe symptoms. So one of the likely causes for this might be that girls are mild and they would often go undiagnosed, but for boys we see more of the aggressive tendencies, more of the repetitive behaviors, and in the girls we would see a more state of autism. So this could actually be one of the reasons that we have more male who are diagnosed and not females.
Thanks so much for that. Okay, I'm not sure if we have you ladies back with us as yet, or if we can move ahead to the next question. Okay. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, sorry about that. We were getting a little difficulties here. Yes. So yes, I caught part of what Miss Hines was saying there. Yes, and I do agree. I do agree with that because you will find more repetitive behaviors in male than you will find in girl. And this is why it is easier to that is diagnosing the boys that you will find more. That is why they you would find that boys would be more you would find more boys that are on the spectrum than in girls because they have more repetitive behaviors. So I do agree with what Miss Hines had mentioned.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Now, I know that all three of you have experience when it comes to special needs education. And I was curious as to what some of the challenges an autistic child might face in a school environment that is not focused on special needs.
Well, catering for a child with special needs, a child that is in the regular school system that teach a typically developing child. Once a child that has special needs or is on the spectrum of autism, they would face challenges because they have certain behavioral patterns. They would have certain or let's just say weak points or weak areas and strong areas, and then the classroom setting might not be for that for that student, for that student. So where it is, as for instance, at Med Pride Academy, in order to make that classroom what uh, to benefit that child with special needs or that is on the spectrum, we put it for that. We set the classroom for that specific child. But then also at the school, what is being taught within the regular school system, such as the ministry's curriculum, you merge the two with the ABA teaching, where that the child would not feel or they being left out. That is a different setting altogether, but also the teaching is one on one, where it is that everything that is being taught to the typically developing child is also being taught along with therapy for that child with autism. So they're you working with them at their pace, and they will not be missing out on anything. But when they are in the regular school system, as in the school that is not the school system or this classroom that is not set for them, there's a lot of things that we as educators we need to really take into to consideration, because as I mentioned, as we are discussing the behavioral pattern of these children, or they might need special attention, also all the therapies being given, and this definitely is not being done within the school setting for the typically developing child, and this can pose a challenge for a child that is on the spectrum.
Thanks so much for that.
I
Miss Smith, would you like to jump in? Oh, sorry. And Nikki, you were gonna go ahead.
Miss Smith could go ahead if she would like to.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay. I would just like to add to what Elizabeth said, because children who are diagnosed with autism, they have specific learning needs, and most times those needs aren't catered for in the regular classrooms. And so they would find a challenge in learning, and they would also find a challenge with their peer interaction, with communication with teachers, and many factors would affect them in the classroom. Many times they might go unnoticed because they're very withdrawn. Sometimes, persons might not notice that, oh, this child has a need for special education. Might be withdrawn, they might be, antisocial just to themselves and not really interacting with peers or working. And so they're often prone to bullyism. They would be bullied by other kids because of certain lack of social interaction that they have and communication skills. So those are just a few things that would affect a child in a regular school environment. Also, they are really visual learners. So um, a teacher standing in front of a board and teaching may not be the best approach to have a child with autism learn, because it would be hard for them to process everything that a teacher is saying. They would learn more by having teaching aids and just visual flashcards and things like that. Because sitting in a classroom and just listening to a teacher, and they don't have that kind of communication skills or language skills, sometimes their processing is delayed, so they don't process language as fast as another child, so they might not retain as much either. So there are a lot of difficulties that surround the child with autism functioning and learning in a normal environment without support and intervention.
Thanks
Oh,
so much for that point, Miss Hines, about the need for support and intervention. I'm gonna make a point on that, but I think Miss Elizabeth wanted to make another contribution.
yeah. I was also going to add a little bit more to what Onika had said, and I do agree with what she is saying, because even if the child is in the regular school system and the teacher is trained to teach a typically developing child, there's so many things that she is going to miss in catering for a child that is on the spectrum, because as we know that each child with autism, it's different, they come with different behaviors, different way of learning. Even the child might be nonverbal, so there's special education teacher is where is needed, which is a highly qualified teacher to teach a child individual according to their ability to set a foundation for that child.
Yes, certainly the need for a healthy support system and a solid foundation for children is definitely the way to go. And on that point of providing the support that is necessary as educators within the special education sector, what are some of the challenges that you might face when it comes to equipping children with the knowledge that they need, providing them with the resources? What are some of the challenges that you personally face within your fields?
Well, I can go first. Well, one of the challenges that we face really is having a support system where it is for parents and also other educators, where it is to deliver because it's not basically a one person show in order to deliver education to a child with special needs. It's a teamwork. So this is where we need the support from uh, others teachers other teachers as well as able to support the parents because also it will be difficult on their part also how to deliver education to them as well as how to manage with that child at home in a positive way to change the behavior negative or behavior to a positive behavior for that child in order to help that child to progress. So one of the main things that we need is a support system where it is support for the child as well as for the parents in order to administer education for that child and not just only sticking to education because that's one thing that we focus here as well because otherwise from the academics as well to help that child or as parents too you would think about it too after education after academic what next for my child so where life skills program where self-care program all of these so this is where again as I mentioned support system a rounded support system where it is that you can help these help parents as well as helping the students.
Please tell me
Okay,
please
so
about Nika.
So, one of the general challenges that I have noticed is based on acceptance. I know that Autism Awareness Month was changed to Autism Acceptance Month, and this fact is based on people having knowledge, but still they don't want to accept the child that is different or the person that is different. Children with autism, they are different. Person with autism, they're different, and a lot of times people want them to change. They want them to be normal. They want them to adopt normal ways of thinking and behaving because they're different. And I think that acceptance is a big challenge because even though parents know that, your child is diagnosed with autism and is different, they still want them to be like another sibling or like another child. So my encouragement is that persons should accept them. They are different and they will remain different. We can work with them, we can give them all the intervention and a different therapy and so on, but they are still going to be different because that is the way that their brain is wired. They're developing differently than another child. So it's hard when a parent might compare a child to another child, or a teacher might compare one child to another child. Children with autism are all unique and different, and so acceptance is a big thing. And we really want persons to accept children with autism, persons with autism in a whole. Thank you.
Acceptance definitely is a very great point to highlight because, as you mentioned, persons might be aware, but they constantly try to change children's behaviors in the way that they are. Yasmin, I don't know if you would want to share about some of the challenges that you might face in this area also.
Um, I can speak from, I'm speaking from my point, and I'm speaking from the Ministry of Education because they're, um, they're in the process of having the children with autism to be in the mainstream school, accepted in the mainstream schools. So that is where the ministry is presently, and advocating for that, as well as the challenges. Well, for me, when a parent come with their child to me, first I ask them, was your child diagnosed? So once the child was diagnosed, the child would have received a letter from the diagnostic center in CPC compound, and there's a team there: psychologists, therapists, occupational therapists, a school administrator, a doctor, pediatrician. It's a team, a panel that will, a different team that will look at the children. So the child will have a complete diagnosis. They'll say exactly if the child is level one, level two, or level three. And with that acceptance letter, with that letter, the parent come to accept, okay, my child needs help. My child might be nonverbal. In autism, some children, they are verbal, some are nonverbal. Some never speak, some say words, spontaneous words, and some of them speak a whole lot. Sometimes they speak and sometimes you wonder, is it making sense? But in their world, it is making sense. So that's one of the reasons why they don't have many friends, because their friends would look at them and be like, what's happened to this child? Because there's not much awareness being spread, shared for quote unquote the normal people to say, well, okay, if you notice a child is behaving in such a way, get to know the child, get to know his parents or her parents. Um, the challenges, I personally will say, with much awareness now and acceptance, move away from awareness, acceptance, um, there should not be many challenges because everyone now is going to accept, hey, this child can go to a mainstream school, and the teachers can't say or shouldn't say, this child don't belong here. So we as teachers, parents, we should do the right thing. Accept the child for who he or she is. Forget about the stigma because at the end of the day, the child is a person and we all need acceptance. And having the child placed in a mainstream school, I can speak from my point. Jared attended the mainstream nursery school, quote unquote, the normal schools known as mainstream schools. He attended Winford Gardens Primary School. Mind you, at nursery he wasn't speaking. He started to speak when he was in primary school. There was no words. So I never knew if he had a friend. I never knew anything. I'm speaking as a point as a parent now. Um, I shared awareness then with the head teacher, Miss Cumberbatch, Miss Jennifer Cumberbatch, and from then on, I was on the PTA then. I never left him. I keep sharing awareness to every school. Yes, he attended St. Barnabas Special School, so I walk the walk. I know about bullying. I know about everything. He's in. He's at presently he's attending Kingston Secondary School. I'm still on the PTA. I'm the PTA president now, all because of sharing awareness. Tomorrow we'll be having a meeting with one of the special education needs officer who's going to meet the teachers for his school and I'm not so sure how that will go, but like I said, there's acceptance. Jared is the only child who has shown progress for Guyana. He's a celebrated guy, a celebrated autistic child that has been progressing and has continued to progress. So, like I said, I've walked the walk. I am not here just to brag about his progress, but I can say early intervention into therapy. That is the only way forward and the only way that can help the child. So, the sooner we accept and we get early intervention into therapy, that's the only way. There is no cure. And leave that with you. If a child is level 3, there's no way that child is going to go to level 1 because of the severity of the disability. The child from level 2 can, yeah, go to level 1, but with much therapy, acceptance from both parents and teachers. Each child can learn, but not at the same time, not at the same pace. So, having said all of that, is to say early intervention into therapy, acceptance. I am not against anything that any one of the other persons on the panel said. Yes, we all have different views, but like I said, as a mother, I walk the walk. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Ms. Smith. And I certainly do agree that early intervention and therapy and support is definitely very, very important when it comes to ensuring that people have the right tools in navigating their lives. So thanks so much for sharing that. Uh, I I wanted to ask a bit about the reasons you got involved in the work. Now, Ms. Smith, given that you just shared a bit of your personal reasons for walking the walk, I was curious as to whether that really was the purpose for you being more so involved in special needs education. And then I'll pivot this question to Elizabeth and Anika about what their rationales were to get involved in the area. Ms. Smith?
I said, because of Jared, he is my inspiration into special education needs.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Understood. Yes, I just got you. I just got you. Thanks for that.
Yes, I said, because of Jared, he is my inspiration into special education needs.
Thank you. Miss Elizabeth, would you mind sharing what first got you involved within this sector?
Well, basically, the first thing is basically love for the children, and then also where before I branched off into opening my own practice and finishing off all my studies. I also, where I was before, I realized that these children have so much more potential. There's so much more that they can do. And I was determined to prove that. And this is where Met Pride Academy and Therapy Center was formed, a school and therapy center was formed. And I also got the chance also to prove that they can do so much more. And this is where now, as I mentioned before, that where it is when it comes to the teaching, this is where we merge the ministry's curriculum and the ABA teaching, which is the applied behavior analysis, to see how much more that these children can learn, what they can do. So, what brings me to even practice or to even get into the field of special education, because I know there's so much more they can do. There is also added to that to where we do inclusion. is that not there's a cutoff point because of the age of the child. We realize that these children can grow or go so far. Otherwise, from academic, there's certain things and ability that they have, but it's just for someone to capitalize on that and to push them actually to bring out those skills that they have. And in order for us even to bring out those skills, and this is where now the very first therapy, which is very important, which is the behavioral therapy, where you can, after giving that to that child, then you can actually get other tasks or other work and other table or academics done for that child. But basically love for those children, and also realizing that they can do so much more than just basic things that everyone thinks that they should just, as I was visiting other places and so before, where they would have them sit, listen, recite songs, listening to nursery rhymes, doing a few cartoons, practicing, but there's so much more that they can give. There's so much more that they can do, and I have proven this at our school, our foundation, and where a child has improved with so much things that they can do. Because, for instance, here we just closed school only last week, where the child actually sit. Every term they sit an end of term test, just like in the regular school system, where it is data collection was done, where it is everything that they have done for the term, we can actually set termly tests for them to see how they progress. So we know that there's so much more that they can do. We have seen it, and all of that brings us to why is it that I got into this field, to accept the love for them, and as well to see how much more that I knew they can do so much more.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Ms. Hines?
Okay, so I got into the field of autism because I had a strong interest in psychology, and I had learned of the step by step school that they were doing applied behavioral analysis therapy and a few other therapy approaches they were using. So I had graduated with a degree in clinical psychology, and so I wanted to be involved in that area. So I started working with them, and I found that I really loved the job. I love the children. I love seeing how they make progress in the different areas. And I decided that this was the field for me. And I just stayed in the field, and it has been a very rewarding and fulfilling field. So I am really happy that I'm a part of the team we have in Guyana that works with children who have autism. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for sharing that with me. And it was really great to hear about some of the backstory about how you got involved in this work to begin with. Is there any final thoughts from anyone that I might not have asked that you feel very important to share at the moment?
Have the child diagnosed. Encourage parents, but you have to choose your words carefully. If you're going to have your child make recommendations, make sure you choose your words carefully, because it's a time when parents, they're between a rock and a hard place, acceptance, and then when they have to deal with the truth, it's hard. So I don't usually, brag about what I've done, because those papers really don't matter when it comes in the classroom. um I often say, go get your child diagnosed. If you don't know what to do, I can help you. I can give you for the guidance. I can even call Mr. Chong or Miss Deborah at the diagnostic center, and I've made recommendations for this child. Could you please assess the child? Thank you. That's my little piece.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Yes, definitely. Getting children diagnosed is a
Well,
great, great first step.
Well, one thing I would like to even mention also to parents, even if you're having your child diagnosed, try your best to do early intervention. And where it is that many persons would have the saying or as a stigma attached, where it is that a child that may have autism or on the spectrum or even special needs, whatever disability that a child may have, that they cannot contribute to society. They can contribute to society. Just seeking the right help, doing early intervention is what's going to help them. And for us, you have a team of persons behind helping and pushing you, as well as that you can talk and relate to, that there is something or there is a lot that your child can do. So not to worry in terms of, we know it's hard in terms of doing that, in accepting your child with a disability, but there's so much more that they can do. It's just for us to tap in on those skills. So for parents not to feel lost.
Okay, I would like to leave with our viewers just a few words of encouragement. I would like to encourage parents, especially, to understand your child. Above all else, above a diagnosis and everything else, you need to understand your child for yourself. I know a lot of times parents would say, it's too hard, they don't understand the behavior patterns, they don't understand why the child's not communicating, but parents have that right to seek intervention, to go out there and ask for help if they need it, if they know that it's too hard, or guardians, caregivers, whoever they are who are taking care of these children, because a lot of times persons would not have the patience to put up with a lot of behaviors and so on. So children with autism can oftentimes be mistreated, be neglected, because people don't understand them. And I know that as parents, they're capable of loving their children, but at the same time, it's harsh because they don't understand what is happening to their kids. And so I would like to encourage them, seek out information, read, learn about your child and how autism affects your child as an individual, because every child with autism is different. So, not because you read about another child or you see another child who has autism, that means that your child is going to be the same. But you need to understand your child as an individual. And I just want to encourage everyone to promote the acceptance of persons with autism, continue to accept them and love them. That's it.
Thank you so, so much, ladies. This was a really great conversation, and I certainly learned a lot. And I know you have left our viewers with a lot to think about. I want to thank you once again for your time and for sharing your perspectives today. Take care.
You're welcome.